Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this shorter version of our ag forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, I apologize, I'm a little bit later tonight. I usually crank the videos out one right after another, but my neighbor came over to work on his car in my garage. I was going to help change some brakes, and we had an electrical fire in there. And about the same time that happened, a squall line came over. So eventful evening for me here over in Champaign, Illinois. But let's get into this. I'm going to start overseas in this video. What I'm going to begin with here is the last 30 days of precipitation anomalies for Europe and parts of Western Russia. Now, there have been a series of large lows that have lately come through parts of Germany and France, bringing in some very heavy rain. You probably heard in the news about some of the flooding in parts of Germany. But I want to draw your attention to this part of Ukraine and then expand that kind of to the east and north into this part of Russia. That's been an area that's been very dry as of late. Now, we've been much wetter closer to the coast, so just something to think about here. Now, over the next 10 days, what's going to happen is there's going to be a frontal boundary that kind of stalls out right in through here. But notice we're going to continue to be drier in this area, and that's a significantly large area that has been dry and has continued to be dry. So we need to watch what's happening here in the northern part of Ukraine. From there, just want to also point out quite warm compared to normal. So we could see some high evaporation rates and some issues in that area. Now, what I want to do from here is I'm going to show you how things look by comparing a vegetation health index to a year ago. And you notice you kind of split Ukraine in half, and we have better looking conditions to the south, but to the north there are kind of spots in through here that don't look as good as they did a year ago. Same thing through this part of the Russian wheat belt. Now, thinking about that, let's slide over and take a look at the United States. Our southern plains into the high plains look better than a year ago. Major drought relief in these areas. But it's been the western Corn Belt, the northern plains, and Canadian Prairie tucking back into the Pacific Northwest that's seen the biggest change on the negative side of things compared to year ago. So we just need to keep a close eye on this. Of course, our drought monitor, which was just released this morning, reflects that. And there's still expansive drought in the northern plains of the United States, pockets of the western Corn Belt, despite even some of the rainfall that has come through as of late. And of course, the greatest of our drought in the United States is anchored over the Four Corner states, the western side of that, the Great Basin, and then the western U.S. I want to also walk you through what our latest soil moisture values look like. So we're going to start off here at 10 centimeters. That would be the top 4 inches. And just take note of how dry we still are in the Red River Valley of the North and northern Minnesota. Also pockets here in the Central Plains that have started to show up dry. We've made some improvements through parts of the Corn Belt with some of the recent storms, but as I go a little deeper, this is now down to 16 inches or 40 centimeters. You start to see that even though this area had some rain lately, well, it's not just here, but take you down even farther. That's 100 centimeters, about 40 inches. And we can tell that that profile still is missing a lot of water. Now, pause the video, take a look at the other areas here, but that just kind of gets us a quick breakdown of what the soil moisture conditions look like. From here, just want to recap quickly the severe weather from yesterday. We were watching parts of Iowa into northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin, also some spots over here on the East Coast, but 33 reports of tornadoes into parts of Iowa. And this 2 rounds of storms, both from me, were underpredicted in their strength, and they delivered quite a bit of rainfall to some places here. So just in our last 72 hours, looking at rainfall here, we can kind of see the storms as they came out of parts of South Dakota and Nebraska. A lot more rain came south here than I expected as well. And as the storms kind of came across Iowa, hit a very dry region in through here. So we've kind of bought some time with some of the recent rains, but I don't want you to look at this and think that everybody that needed rain in the western Corn Belt got it. Because as you can see, it did not get north of that area. Now, what's going to be happening in this forecast is we're going to see this frontal boundary, which is right now tucked between 2 high pressure cells. There's one here, and there's another one right there. See the flows coming around them? Between, that's the front, and it's going to slowly slide to the south and east and curl up right along the Gulf Coast. We're not worried about any tropical activity in the near term from the Atlantic, and Felicia here is going to be moving toward Hawaii through the next 5 days. But it's this low that's spinning here in the Gulf of Alaska, combined with the way the jet stream is going to kind of get blocked up here in the next 10 days. It's going to send a big ridge like this right up into the Canadian Prairie and a downstream trough that's going to occupy much of the eastern half of the United States. So we need to take a look at what that's going to do. Some satellite imagery here from this afternoon. You can see where that boundary is and all the storms that are firing up on it. You can also see some of the big storms that are out here on the mountains and along our Gulf Coast, where we do have the sea breeze interacting with an old lingering boundary. But take a look at how much smoke is outside of that cloud field, coming through parts of the Canadian Prairie, the northern plains, and here big fires in parts of California and Oregon, and the smoke getting churned up here by the large high that's in this area. In terms of the latest radar data, I'm just going to walk you back and forth. You can see that boundary All right, and you can see the flow coming into the boundary out of the south, and it's this boundary here that we're going to watch continue to move toward the south and east with time. Before I kind of show you where that's all going, quick update on the tropics. There's a 10% chance that this thing out here might develop, but nothing really going to worry about here. Not a whole lot else happening across the Atlantic. So one of the big reasons for the lack of activity across parts of the Atlantic has to do with where most of the rising motion is in the tropics. And a lot of that just came out of the Indian Ocean and is heading over toward the maritime continent area. And this is where Australia, Indonesia, and the Philippines are. So you can see the forecast here. What I'm going to be watching out for is for the MJO to eventually make its move back over to phases 8 and 1. And as that occurs, what we're going to see is we're going to move the best rising motion here to now be coming over parts of Africa and this side of the Indian Ocean. So where we have suppression right now in this area, I do expect that once we get into August, this is going to start to get more active again. And like I said, that wind shear is very low across the Atlantic right now, so the conditions are primed for this to continue to go. Now, as we look out here into the forecast, I've got this pause next Wednesday. And at that point, like we talked about on Monday, there's our trough that's just off in the Gulf of Alaska. So this is part of that EPO pattern we discussed. And there's the ridge as it's now being seen develop here. So what's going to end up happening here is this is going to push quite a bit of heat north, and we're going to leave a boundary that's going to sit right down here, a frontal boundary, on which I'm expecting quite a bit of rainfall. So let's kind of get in there and diagnose that. I'll use the WPC data first. So again, this was released earlier in the day. So that frontal boundary was here, and now it's slowly sliding through from eastern Kansas all the way here to the eastern Great Lakes. And that's going to be the area we're currently seeing the heavy rain as of Thursday evening. The boundary is just going to keep going farther to the south, and that's going to bring in rainfall down here into parts of the lower Mississippi River Valley and even over to the East Coast with time. Now, what's going to end up happening with that boundary, I'm going to show you here by looking at some different data. The European model kind of tucks it back up like this. Could get some storms that come back up into the central plains here, but gonna go over dry in this area as the high pressure comes in. We're gonna keep seeing those scattered storms run around the Intermountain West, but as I show you in a few moments here, the day 4 through day 10 looks a lot different from this. We're going to come back to that. First, this is what I've got from the GFS. So we're looking at the 12Z models. These both came out after the markets closed. So this is the ECMWF next 7 days, and here's the GFS. And overall, I have to say things look pretty consistent between the models. I'm going to talk about this in just a few seconds here. But let's do a little comparison between the two models. The ECMWF would be where the green colors show where it's wetter, and then these colors in through here represent where like the GFS is wetter. So you notice the ECMWF gets that front farther to the south and parks it down here over the next 7 days, bringing wetter conditions there. But the GFS is a bit wetter right here to where the Mississippi and the Ohio come together, and also the Missouri comes in here to give us our wet conditions right in that particular location. Now, as we take a look at this day 4 through day 10 time period, this is where the high pressure cell that's going to be sitting over the Red River Valley of the North initially starts moving south and then occupies, in through parts of the Eastern Corn Belt. So there you see that lingering frontal boundary, right? But what's going to happen is as that ridge sets up, we will get northwest flow in this area. And because there isn't much shutting down the Gulf of Mexico in terms of moisture transport, overall, I think we're going to get quite a bit of scattered storms coming through this area as well. So even though it's not showing up in the model, I want you all to be aware that the pattern is conducive to that. Those northwest flow scenarios bring in a lot of scattered storms into that area. You can see it if I take you all the way out here to Tuesday the 27th, almost the end of July. The ridge seems to be back in this area, so the flow will often come over that and cascade down just like this. So our week 2 precipitation pattern, so this is again the 12Z European, okay, there's your southwestern monsoon and the storms run around the high over the Intermountain West. The front sags down here, the tail end of it stays over parts of Texas. But this is all now showing up wetter than it did in the 0Z runs for today. And it's not just the European model that sees that, it is also in the GFS. So now you start to see this area in the week 2, given a little bit of a flash of green here showing up wetter. The GFS is drier over the southeast, but has that same feature out in the Intermountain West. All right, so there's some similarities here in our models. What I'm going to finish up with is a temperature forecast, because as that ridge builds over the next 5 days, this is where the heat returns. We will see 100-degree heat in this area, a lot of mid to upper 90s. But you get south of there, temperatures moderate, near normal. And it lasts. This is all the way out to day 5 through 10. And during that time period, once again, this region has the greatest chances for being well above average in temperatures, with the cooler conditions farther to the south, as you can see. What I'm going to finish with is just tell you, go watch that extended briefing I already posted. We discussed some of the long-range forecast through the month of August and discuss what some of these caveats are here. And we also give a discussion about La Nina, and that's an important one to take a look at. So check it out, okay? I'll talk to you again on Monday. Until then, have a good rest of your week and weekend, and we'll catch up again then. Thanks.